Let us pray. Lord of all, this moment is not a moment that any of us would have chosen, but you have chosen us for this moment. Bless those who have been given great responsibility, with great compassion for all people who will be affected by their decisions, with great wisdom to see beyond what is merely in the short term, with great courage to do what is right, even when it is difficult, with the gift of grace, love, and justice, which carries us all when we put our trust and faith in you. We pray your blessings upon each of us as we seek to do your will this day, that our works may be pleasing in your sight, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
No, just a minute. Yeah. This house is in session. Minutes for the meeting held on Tuesday, September 21st, 2021, and Tuesday, September 20th, 2021, to be confirmed.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be confirmed.
The question is that the aforementioned minutes be confirmed. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby confirmed.
Announcements by Your Honor the Speaker. Messages from Her Excellency the Governor General. Petitions, papers, government notices, private members' notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills, statements by ministers, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, notices of motion for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance, orders of the day.
Honorable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of standing orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42, subsection 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Second, please.
The question is that the aforementioned standing order be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Government business, sir.
Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 8. In the name of the Honourable Minister in the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance, to move the passing of a resolution in accordance with Section 5 of the Land Acquisition Act, Chapter 228, to approve the compulsory acquisition by the Crown of the parcel of land situate at Workman's in the parish of St. George in this island for the purpose of constructing recreational facilities for public use.
Honourable Member for St. Lucie.
Mr. Speaker, I raised this morning, and I am indeed very delighted to be able to move the passing of this resolution in this Honourable House and to lead off this debate. it is indeed quite important as we move to create and provide opportunities for our young people and our members of the various communities across Barbados. Let me first say, though, that since I have, since my reassignment, it has been really a pleasure to serve in this capacity, and it has been indeed as well an eye-opener when you recognize and you realize what tremendous work we still have to do as not just a government, but as a country with respect to housing, with respect to ownership, land ownership, and so on across Barbados. Now, let me just state that this ministry, we seek the approval of this Honourable House to acquire a very small portion of land, no more than about half an acre, as we would call it, at Workman's in St. George for recreational purposes. And this came about from as far back as last year when a site visit was done by the Member of Parliament for the area, the Honourable Member for St. George South, and it was determined that this land should be acquired for recreational purposes. Now, let me pause and talk about what is actually happening in relation to creation of these spaces and facilities for our young people especially. I always heard when I was growing up, Mr. Speaker, I was always taught, my mother always said, the devil will find work for idle hands to do. We have a situation in the country even now, Mr. Speaker, that because of this pandemic, which has struck the world, but has struck Barbados as well because we are part of this world, we have a number of persons who have become unemployed, not because they want to be, but that is just how the situation is, and the government is trying with all means to reverse this. But in the meantime, we also have to fill the gap. We have to fill the gap to occupy persons, and even as a result of this pandemic, you recognize that perhaps you have other skills that you didn't realize you had before as you move about, as you try to, because of the available time that you have. And these facilities, when you create these facilities, or you have to create facilities for youngsters to work, not just work, but to play and to empower themselves. Empower themselves in the sense that for this resolution here, Mr. Speaker, when we talk about recreational facilities, we're talking about creation of a resource center in that area, which will serve places, and the Member of Parliament would know better than I do, but I believe places like Jericho and Workman's and so on, so that Lower Estate, Orange Estate, so that the minds of these young people in the area, and perhaps older folks as well, who are yet sharp, can be able to be occupied based on what is being provided for them. A recreational facility, a resource center in itself, Mr. Speaker, is very meaningful, because within that, you not only can you be teaching things like information technology, where technology has overtaken the world today and is very, very important, because without technology, and again, as I point to what is happening in Barbados at this point in time, and the world over at this point in time, the technology has really come to the forefront, and those things which we believe we could not do before, we are now doing, because as a matter of fact, even in this parliament, Mr. Speaker, you can now log on, you can now be here via the technology, and you can make your contribution. And in order to be able to use that technology, you obviously have to be trained to do it. Now, the land, let me go back to the land at Workman's, which is near the Workman's Primary School. It is currently used by the students of that institution as a playground. It is usually, but it is not the land of the, it does not belong to the school, right? No, it belongs to the government, and that hence we are acquiring this land. We are acquiring this land to enable for an expansion of an adjacent playground. And that playground, which is used by the Workman's Primary School. Once that is done, Mr. Speaker, we will have a lovely playing field there for the residents, as I indicated, in those districts and so on. And that is very, very important. We have many persons out there, Mr. Speaker, who have various skills there. We don't know who will be the next Pele. We may have good footballers there. We may have good, you can have probably good netballers there. You have good basketballers, all in the vicinity. But we have to create the environment whereby these persons can, their skills are honed, and whereby these persons can rise. These persons can be spotted by those persons from various disciplines, so that they get that opportunity. And that is extremely important. Now, it brings as well a sense and community empowerment. Now, land ownership, or the Ministry of Housing and Lands, does not only see lands as lands being made available for housing, because there are many, many other needs across the various communities across the length and breadth of this island. And we have, therefore, as a government and as a country, to meet the needs of persons as we move along, as we carry out the mandate of the people. I would have mentioned, Mr. Speaker, early on, I would have mentioned the resource centers. And the resource center, we're looking at this particular location as well for a resource center. And I believe that every member of this Honourable House, if not yet having benefited from a resource center in their community, would very much like one. Certainly, I would like one in St. Lucie, where I am happy to represent the good people of St. Lucie, and we need resource center as well. So perhaps from this position that I sit today, I would now have to look for some land and see what can be done. Because, you know, with every housing development that there is, and we seem to miss this, or we seem to be lacking, Mr. Speaker, in this area. Whenever there's a new housing development done, as I understand it, one of the requirements is that you have recreational space. You have recreational space in these communities so that the children, the adults, and so on can come out and not just play, but mingle and learn. And that is extremely important. I think one of the things lacking, that has been lacking in Barbados over a few years now, there were times when I was growing up, perhaps you were as well, Mr. Speaker, and a couple of us, a number of us in here, where you were so minded by the older folk, where you will see the older folk out there with the younger ones, talking, training, teaching them, and so on. And that is something that perhaps we have grown away from. But at this point in time, I believe firmly with all my heart, Mr. Speaker, that we need to get back to that. And that is why, with the creation of these spaces and these facilities in the various communities, it gives us the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to have training where the older folk can assist the younger folk. And as a man of the Bible talk about where the wives train the young girls. That is spoken of in the Word. Where the mothers train the daughters. And you may not, and it may be a case where the women might not be biological mothers, but they have a responsibility, Mr. Speaker, to train those young girls out there, and in some instances young boys too, to make them the best citizens that they could be. I was a member of a church where they had cake icing classes by the mothers, they had handicraft and so on. And if you may got community centers, that's what the community centers should be doing. Not just the area of technology, no, but classes in terms of persons being able to cook. How many of these things are happening in this day and age? Or have we moved, Mr. Speaker, to the age of the fast food? And I don't have anything against fast food, but I certainly believe that as we have these facilities, they should be used to teach, to train our youngsters, whether male or female, in all the areas that would make them well-rounded in terms of what they can do, because you have to survive in a world today, Mr. Speaker, that does not promise you anything. You have to survive, Mr. Speaker, in a world that perhaps presents, because nobody expected a pandemic, but here we have to survive, we have to work through it, we have to work with it. We don't know for how long, it might be for the rest of our lives, but we have to be able to have those skills to be able to get through such situations, and we don't know what lies ahead of us in any event. So this ministry is not only about lands for housing, but lands as well, Mr. Speaker, which would be used, or where we can place facilities to be used to benefit our people as we move on. We have to be, we have, Mr. Speaker, as well, you have lands for the agriculture program. I was part of the Ministry of Agriculture, and the Ministry of Agriculture introduced, Mr. Speaker, a very good program there called the feed program. And I am still, before my reassignment, we were working on a policy, on a program, another project, Project Care, where persons would have had the ability to be able to do some cultivation on lands not far from them, or what we would call sometimes backyard farming. Now, again, this is another initiative where the ministry would be, because the ministry, I did a tour, Mr. Speaker, with the Honourable Member for St. Michael Southeast a few weeks ago. And when I did that tour, we saw lands belonging to the NHC. But these lands cannot really be used for housing. They're so small, they're so where they're located, they're so narrow and so on. But, Mr. Speaker, those said lands, which are owned by the government, can be used as part of small agricultural projects where persons, youngsters, and communities. Remember, I said, Mr. Speaker, that in a pandemic, you have to create those opportunities for people to be able to survive. You have to be able to create those opportunities. And as I did that tour in the St. Michael Southeast constituency, Mr. Speaker, I saw these lands which would be available, and there isn't anything we can do with them. And you cannot allow them, certainly, Mr. Speaker, to remain in bush, then to become a health hazard. We already have challenges with health with this pandemic as far as I'm concerned. So we do not want those lands to remain as they are in bush and so on, creating health hazards and problems for the residents nearby. So those lands are lands I believe should, where people can automatically, and I'm sure you have some in St. Michael Central as well, should be able to cultivate and to grow even some food. Might not be lands to grow potatoes or yams, but you can go, certainly you may be able to grow chive and sweet peppers and hot peppers and parsley and so on, those little condiments that you need, Honourable Member of St. Philip North, to be able to put in your food. And not only just that, Mr. Speaker, to use as a little source of income. A little source of income, because if you have the lands available for these things and you are able to put them to good use, and at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, it gives you that opportunity to get some much needed income for those who may not be working. Because if you're not working, Mr. Speaker, you still have to feed your children. You still have certainly to eat food. You still have bills to pay. And the state cannot have all the resources at the end of the day to do this. So this ministry, we look at a holistic approach. We look at a holistic approach to life. We look at a holistic approach to the issues within the society that present themselves from time to time. And you know that the lands in the particular, the lands belong to the Crown. We are responsible for overseeing them. So if a particular ministry needs to do something, it's not like that ministry can go immediately and just take up land and use it. It has to come through this process here, where the Ministry of Housing would then acquire that land so that that particular ministry is able to carry out its programs. And we have a number of programs as a government. We have going, Mr. Speaker, as well, another program here which we call the Clean and Green program, beautifying Barbados. Creating those green spaces in various districts to make Barbados better, to make Barbados look beautiful again, creating not just opportunities, but where persons are able, Mr. Speaker, to come out and enjoy the I wouldn't want to call it the sunshine, but come out and enjoy life, relax. Where grandparents at some point in time, who might have retired from their daily toils, are able to come out. And I just, over the last 2 months or so, Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Member for Christchurch, West Central, spoke. As a matter of fact, some work was done in an area called Friendly Hall in my constituency, in the wonderful constituency of St. Lucie. And when that work was done by the Ministry of Transport Works and Water Resources, Mr. Speaker, I saw an opportunity. I saw an opportunity to be able to do something generally for the residents in the Broomfield, Maycott Stars, Friendly Hall, Husbands areas. Land there, a lovely space, but nothing happening in it. And I approached the Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central, and I said, through the NCC, I would like a park established in that area, a good green space. And it was done. It is still a work in progress. But you could imagine the amount of comments the amount of comments that I get as I go through that area in the constituency where persons are extremely happy to have that park where they can just come out and relax and spend some time with their families on a Sunday evening or on a Friday evening to just come out there and relax and so on. And this is what we do across this country now. When you look at that, I'm certain that there are other members in this Honourable House who benefit or who would have already benefited from such. And if you haven't as yet, I'm almost certain that it is something possible. You can start looking if you find a piece of land in your constituency and it cannot be used for no other purpose. At least you can approach the Ministry of Housing to be sure of who is the landowner, and if the government is the landowner, and even if the government is the landowner, so that you are able to create these opportunities and do these things across your constituency as a member parliament, because everybody wants to see their constituency uplifted. That is the reason that we are here, because we came to do better for our country, and the country is made up of parishes. The parishes are made up of the different constituencies. Not every constituency is a complete parish. For example, St. Michael is whole about 11, right? But what I'm saying is, Mr. Speaker, that the lands available in Barbados, or land space in Barbados, not all can be used for housing. Not all should be used for housing in any event, because you have to create those opportunities, you have to create those spaces, Mr. Speaker, where members of the various communities can come from work and they can relax and they can also play. Where you can, for our youngsters as well, Mr. Speaker, where you can have that opportunity to better yourselves even as we go through this environment called, or this pandemic called COVID. Mr. Speaker, I would want to take the opportunity as well. There are times we have come to Parliament, and we have to come to Parliament as a ministry to acquire lands as well for the purpose of road construction. And I particularly want to talk about this because as you go through some communities, there are persons who do not have proper access to their homes in the 21st century Barbados. Last Saturday, while I was out in my constituency, the rain fell, and constituents from that particular area showed me, I saw first the hazard that it is to get from their homes to the main road. We lived at a time where you had persons years ago having to walk with 2 pairs of shoes. And the Honourable member from St. Peter could attest to this because we are from rural constituencies. We are not from constituencies in town, so to speak. But where persons do not have proper access. And those persons not having proper access, sometimes this ministry has to acquire land to be able to create proper access for such persons in such districts. Sometimes there is a problem, Mr. Speaker, and this is one of the things that I pointed out as I spoke to that constituent on Saturday, where you may have land ownership is an issue because you have to take off a foot here on one side and a foot there on the other side to create, Mr. Speaker, the proper width or space whereby you can do road improvement. And sometimes, Mr. Speaker, that becomes a problem. And I would want to appeal to persons, to landowners, in situations like these. You have to give consideration to your brothers and sisters. I don't know if you have this problem in St. Michael Central, Mr. Speaker. You know, where it is an issue when government wants to create better for the citizens by constructing a new road, a new pathway, anything of that sort, where the land becomes an issue. And then government has to move in because we are interested in improving the lives of our people. Government has to move in and do an acquisition. Now, I know persons have issues with acquisition, and they have that issue with the acquisition in some instances because having acquired the land, the reimbursement or the payment for that land takes too long. Takes too long, and that is an issue which we as a government, we aim to address, or we're actually dealing with it, because you cannot, in all fairness, acquire some person's land for development and improvement of others, and you have to look at it in this way, that while you are doing that for others, you cannot disenfranchise, or you cannot, what people may say, you cannot owe then persons forever. Because if you acquire the land, then the persons get paid. And that is why persons have challenges. And we know that there was this problem. This problem has not now started. This problem would have started a long time ago. And this government is making an effort that once there is land acquisition, we have to find the resources. We have to find the money, let me put it that way then, to be able to reimburse an individual who as a result would have lost the value of that property which they own. So the acquisition comes for various reasons. We have, when we do this, we have to be forthright, we have to be upfront with persons at the end of the day, and we have to ensure as well, Mr. Speaker, that persons are well reimbursed. And an acquisition is not just something that is done willy-nilly, because before you acquire any property and so on, it has to be valued. There has to be a valuation, Mr. Speaker, so that persons don't feel, as we used to say I used to hear my parents or my grandparents say, that somebody joke out the eye. Because persons feel that way at times about government too. The government is joke out your eye. No, we are not here to joke out anybody's eye. You have to get the valuations done. I see the Honourable Leader of the Opposition casting his eye over this side. But you have to get the proper valuations done to be able, Mr. Speaker, to correctly and properly reimburse those persons who, because the truth of the matter is, they are making a contribution to society. They are making a contribution by that to their country by allowing or by giving up that property or that land which they would have owned for the improvement and for the development of the country or in the particular area across this country, Barbados. And that is one of the important things that we have to continue. We have to continue to do. We have to look out for those. We have to look out for those persons, Mr. Speaker. And you have to do right. You have to do right by the people. I know persons who would have, whose land would have been acquired for years now, and they're still awaiting payment. And those things, Mr. Speaker, I must say, those things are wrong. Those things are wrong. Some persons I know as well, Mr. Speaker, they die and go on and have not even yet received, and the estate in some instances might not have even yet received the payment for what was acquired. Those things, Mr. Speaker, are wrong. Because after you would have had the benefit, or a country would have had the benefit of the acquisition, then I believe, Mr. Speaker, we should move with haste. With haste, Mr. Speaker, to give that, or to reimburse, or to make payment for that particular acquisition that we do as we move along. So it should not be a case. We know that sometimes there might be some challenges and so on, and there might be some hiccups as well. But all those things should be taken care of in reasonable time, so that it does not become an issue, and nobody will feel, Mr. Speaker, that they have been unfair in that regard. So this ministry, Mr. Speaker, as we continue to do the work across Barbados, as I would have indicated, it is not just about housing, it is about development, recreational facilities, it is about, Mr. Speaker, community empowerment of all our people. I want to take, and I know that there will be a more, Mr. Speaker, fulsome debate on this, or report on this, as the Honourable Member for Christchurch West, Minister of Housing. We would have had a situation, Mr. Speaker, where we had a freak storm, then we had a hurricane, and we had properties damaged and so on. And we are working assiduously, Mr. Speaker, through all agencies to make sure that these repairs and rebuilds, Mr. Speaker, are done in a very timely manner. Some take longer than we would have anticipated, but there are a number of challenges that you meet as you go along. There are a number of challenges that you meet in some of these instances, but I want to assure the House, Mr. Speaker, that we are doing our best, and as I said, a full report will come, has to go to Cabinet, and then it will come to this House to update Barbadians, to update this Honourable House on the progress that we are making as a ministry and the agencies associated therewith, like the National Housing Corporation, the Rural Development Commission, the Urban Development Commission. Those agencies, those are the agencies entrusted, Mr. Speaker, that have the responsibility of doing all the repairs, that they are in. All the repairs, Mr. Speaker, that we have to undertake across this country, and there have been many. There have been many, Mr. Speaker. I remember, and I'm talking about this as housing, when I remember, Mr. Speaker, once the hurricane had passed, I know a number of my colleagues would have gone through the length and breadth of their various constituencies and would have seen the tremendous damage that was done by first the freak storm to some extent, because they were very close behind each other, and then the hurricane. And some of the things that I saw, Mr. Speaker, caused me to think hard and to wonder, Mr. Speaker, to realize what life is like for some of my fellow Barbadians. The conditions in which they live. Only last Sunday, which is 2 days ago, I made a visit to a particular area to see the conditions which were drawn to my attention under which a couple lived. And this happens from time to time across constituencies, because I am not going to stand here, Mr. Speaker, and pretend that I know or I have seen every single situation, or I'm aware of every single situation within my constituency. And I dare would challenge anybody to say such, because there are things that have to be drawn to your attention. And there's nothing wrong with that. What would be wrong is after it has been drawn to your attention, if you do nothing about it. But the storm caused us, Hurricane Elsa caused us to see and to realize in some instances a lot of the conditions under which people live, how their homes have been constructed, whether they can withstand, and you don't wonder, or there was no wonder then that you would not in some instances you did not have that kind of the kind of effect or the kind of damage that you had, because when you look, Mr. Speaker, and you see what has happened, you realize that this would have had to happen at some point in time because of the conditions under which persons have lived. And we have to, as a government and as a people, we have to stand up and we have to not just represent these people, but ensure that the conditions under which they live are improved. There's some persons, I visited a house and in a situation where just the roof came off, or the roof was damaged, not even necessarily coming off. But when you look at the structure in itself, what are you going to do? You're going to just put back on a roof and leave it? You got to go beyond that, because when you look in some instances at the structure in itself, there's a need for a lot of work to be done. And I'm sure that we would have seen this across Barbados. And those are some of the things, Mr. Speaker, that would have slowed down to some extent the work that we are doing as a ministry, the work that the various agencies are doing with respect to housing and so on. And I know sometimes there are people that will complain. But you now have to do work or do repairs for the future, not just what has happened in the past. You got to do repairs for the future to ensure that if you have another such occurrence, that these structures are able, Mr. Speaker, to withstand at least a Category 3 hurricane. That is what you have to do. So while there may be concerns, Mr. Speaker, and while there may be some angst in relation to repairs and such like, we are doing our very best to ensure that what we do is something that is worthwhile. It can withstand, Mr. Speaker, the very test, at least up to a Category 3 hurricane, should we have one, God forbid. That is what we have to do. Because the housing stock, as we look at it, we recognize No wonder such would have happened, because a lot of the house, I am almost ashamed, Mr. Speaker. I am almost ashamed. And this must not now just be a concern of a government, but we have to address, Mr. Speaker, all these social issues within our country. Seriously address them. And it is not a work that can take 3 months or 6 months. It is not a work, Mr. Speaker, that require just MPs or ministers. Mr. Speaker, it requires all of us as a people. All of us as a people, Mr. Speaker, to look out and ensure we do all that we can to make this country a better country in relation now, Mr. Speaker, where housing is concerned. Where the pockets of poverty exist, that people are not in a position to take care of themselves as best as would be necessary. And with all the agencies that we have, Mr. Speaker, it has to be a concerted effort at the end of the day. It has to be a concerted effort, because we cannot allow persons to fall by the wayside. We cannot allow persons to fall by the wayside. And as a Christian person, Mr. Speaker, I have a heart to reach out to people. To look out for your brother and your sister in various communities. When you look and see what persons have had to go through or how persons are living, it means that you cannot turn your mind, you cannot turn your face, you cannot turn your backs, Mr. Speaker, on such situations. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, I am happy, having come to this Ministry of Housing. I believe that I can be part of the change that is required. Because we must also have change in attitude and how we deal with people. And how we look at the circumstances and how we seek to transform the lives of people, to change those circumstances under which and in which people live. It is not to be for the glorification of anybody. Because when people see you sometimes say, man, you got X ministry or Y ministry, there's a top ministry. It's not about a top ministry. It is about transformation and change, that you want to use the position that you have to impact and make better, to impact the lives of people and make those lives better. I have that opportunity, Mr. Speaker, in this important ministry. Again, I go back to the good book that never puts you wrong. You have to be able to change people's lives, because remember, there's a part of the scripture, and I know the goodly bishop would agree with me here. You don't want a situation where the good master tell you, I was hungry and you didn't feed me, I was thirsty and you didn't give me drink. You don't want that situation at all. But we want that every single case, bar none, that we come upon or that is drawn to our attention, to be able as best as we can, and based on all the resources that we have. Even if we don't, we have to find resources, Mr. Speaker, to be able to do something on the behalf of the downtrodden and the less fortunate in our society, in this country, Barbados, because we are all in this together. We are all part of this. Sometimes it requires us as a ministry, because one of the challenges that we have, Mr. Speaker, one of the challenges that we have as we look to execute repairs and rebuilds for persons, there's some persons, Mr. Speaker, the lands that they're on are not theirs. They've been waiting for some time. And now it is a challenge. If you have to repair the house, it is all right. And I know the Honourable member for St. George South might have come upon some of these situations. If you have to repair the house, it's all right. But if you have to rebuild it, it is a problem. That is why it is important that a government should own lands then, that you can now move, if you have to move these people and you can construct something for them, you can rebuild on the government's land, so that these people are not left out there in the cold. Because you know what happens? The persons looking on don't know of the challenges that are being experienced by the government when the government seek to do right by these people. So then you can get a government getting licks. Where you fix Susie house, you fix Maisie one. But the government has to position itself that where there is land available, or find land, not just for housing development as such, but you have lands out there where in emergencies and you have and certain things happen, you have lands out there that you are able to respond, even housing that you are able to respond. One of the things that has been a pet peeve of mine, Mr. Speaker, is that sometimes you have a house fire too, and persons are then at the mercies of others. The government should have, and one of the things that we look at is you have some emergency housing available out there for persons. And if it means that this ministry then, if there's not enough land, we have to acquire some more land, Mr. Speaker, not just for the recreational facilities and so on, but these are areas that we have to look at, so that we have certain lots available, Mr. Speaker, that we can then assist in cases of emergencies, these kind of weather events that we have, and so on. And Mr. Speaker, I'm going to wrap up here, but I felt, Mr. Speaker, I felt compelled to share these thoughts with this house, because this is the way that we must think, this is the way that we must go. So this resolution where we are acquiring for recreational facilities, Mr. Speaker, and to improve such, it is not just about that, but we have to do other things if we need to acquire as well, so that we cover the full gamut of what is necessary in the 21st century Barbados. That is what we have to do. And with those few words, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this resolution be read. Do no pass.
Honourable Sir Michael West.
Thank you, sir, Mr. Speaker. I was inquiring of the honourable member for St. Philip South, Minister of Agriculture, as to why he would have chased the honourable member from St. Lucie away from that ministry, so that he finds himself now back at the Ministry of Housing.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order.
Honourable Sir Michael for
It
Christchurch
is
West.
clearly a misrepresentation of the House, as the honourable member is obviously misleading the House, because the Minister of Agriculture cannot chase away anybody, because the only person that appoints and disappoints is the Prime Minister. And the honourable member knows that better than anybody else in this House. And clearly he'll be misleading, because the Minister of Agriculture, the member for St. Philip South, could not have anything to do with that.
Clearly, I was not misleading the House. I didn't make a definitive statement. I simply said, I inquired of the member of St. Philip South, who is not now in his seat, as to why he would have chased.
Mr. Speaker, on a point of order, the honourable member is contravening the rules of this House. As you are well aware, no one is allowed to reflect on the presence or absence of another member, and it would ask that that be struck from the record.
And I apologize for that if that is necessary. I was not reflecting on his absence. I was simply lamenting the fact that he is not here to substantiate what I was trying to say. And I was not attempting to mislead the House at all. I simply asked of the honourable member, who can't now in this moment speak for himself.
I've heard, Honourable
Yeah,
member.
right.
So there's no need to repeat, I've heard.
All right. But interestingly enough, contrary to what the honourable member for Christchurch West said, the member of St. Philip South never said to me that it was the Prime Minister that moved him. He said otherwise. That's not the name he called.
Honourable member, speak on the debate, please continue.
I plan to speak on the debate, if I can do so without interruption, sir.
From myself or from the honourable member?
From the honourable member for Christ, you are entitled to interrupt me.
Exactly.
anytime.
I just want to put it in perspective.
I don't feel interrupted when you intervene,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Speaker. You are here to give us guidance, but I would want to go on, because it was not the Honourable Prime Minister, I was told, that caused him to flee. Now, Mr. Speaker, with
Honourable Mr. Speaker, sir, on a point of order, the honourable member for St. Lucie did not flee. And for the member for St. Michael West to suggest that the honourable member fled is clearly misleading the House. The honourable member is an honourable member and went where he was asked to move to. And for him to suggest that an honourable member fled is a clear misrepresentation of the situation. And I would ask that it be struck from the record.
Point of order noted, honourable member for Christchurch West.
and if necessary, I'll take that back. He didn't flee. I go back to what I originally said. He was chased.
Honourable member for St. Michael West, I would wish to implore you to refrain from the language that you're currently using.
I'm going past that, Mr. Speaker.
Please refrain
I'm going
from
past
the
that.
language that you're using.
The honourable member obviously has, that is a member of St. Lucie who last spoke, obviously has a passion for housing, because he spoke at length about housing, and I thought we were on a land acquisition resolution with reference to recreational and sporting facility. But there was a lengthy dissertation on the matter of housing. So obviously he's now happy where he is, Mr. Speaker. Now, I want to raise a question, and maybe since the honourable member for Christchurch West feels so energized today, perhaps he can provide me with the answer. Or maybe the answer lies with the Honourable Member for St. George South, who is the Minister responsible for sports at this time. But I know that it was a declared policy, long ago, a declared policy, that recreational facilities, especially at the community level, would be managed by persons resident in the community. I do not know that that policy, having been declared, is being pursued. If it is, certainly would be interesting to be brought up to date as to what is happening with reference to how pavilions and sporting facilities are managed. Are we doing it centrally still from the Sports Council or some other government entity? Are we doing it centrally from the Ministry of Sports? I think it is very worthwhile that we go in a direction that we employ. When I say employ, I use that in a broad sense. I'm not necessarily talking about any monetary remuneration, but certainly that we utilize and employ community persons to help to manage and run these facilities. I think that if we go in that direction, we're talking about perhaps better and easier access to use and proper use of the facilities, a lot less perhaps downtime, and it gives a sense of empowerment to people at the level of the community. This belongs to Workman's, and this team here at Workman's is responsible for managing this facility. So I'm wondering where we are with that, if it is a policy that has been abandoned or if it is still on the cards. Second thing I want to say, Mr. Speaker, is that I believe that when we acquire land and when, as a government, we construct these facilities or make them available to communities, that we do so always with a view towards incorporating a commercial opportunity element around these facilities. If you build a sports pavilion at Workman's, or if you build it at Haynesville, or if you build it at Waterford, Mr. Speaker, it is a place where a lot of activity is going to be centered, hopefully, and I believe it establishes clearly the opportunity for some level of commerce, especially by those who live in the community. You can't just go and drop a pavilion, drop a sports club, drop a resource center, and not see the opportunity to provide for commercial activity, especially in these days when government is talking about having a spirit of business, when government is talking about decriminalization of vending, a tremendous opportunity attaching to the potential around these sporting facilities. I wonder if that is part and parcel of the construction plans of the Ministry of Housing, if they're the ones engaging in the construction of these facilities, or the Ministry of Sports, if they're the ones under whose purview it falls, whether or not a lot of thought, or any thought at all, is being given to providing for serious commercial, not just a bar that you can drink some liquor, but serious commercial activity, perhaps a small level, that can help people to feed a child or two at home. I've asked this question before, don't know that I have been answered. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, how do we determine where we put these facilities? Is it a question of the Honourable Member for St. George South being the Minister of Sports, saying to the Minister of Housing and Lands, look, I need a sports facility at Workman's? What is the basis upon which the decision is made as to where we locate these facilities? Is it the demographics? Is it the unemployment situation? Is it some other dynamic of importance that is taken on board in consideration when we determine where we want? What would have determined that this facility is to be established at Workman's? And why Workman's? Why not Work Hall in this instance? And that's all. I've asked that question before, and I do not know that I have properly received an answer. Now, Mr. Speaker, I want to say this again. I've said this before too, but persons must be reminded because they are apt to easily forget. It was the intention to establish a resource center at Country Road. The Honourable Member for Christchurch West is aware of that, Minister of Housing. And the project, in fact, the effort, in fact, had started. An extension had been made to the building. Refurbishments were taking place. The idea was to establish a technology community resource center that would serve Hinesbury Road and Country Road, parts of Passes Road, because there was no such facility there at the time, and the government of the day, the administration of the day, was in the business of establishing those things. A project started, and then the party in office at the time went out of office as government, and the former opposition then assumed the reins of government, and that project went into abeyance. Now, the Honourable Minister of Housing was kind enough and courteous enough to invite me down to a press briefing that he had at the precincts of that same facility on Country. It's the old welfare building, Mr. Speaker, you'll be aware of that. And he was kind enough because the project, the building now is again under some refurbishment efforts, and but it's being used alternatively and not for a resource center. So I'm still asking, what is the basis on which we determine where we locate these things, and when in the world, on somebody's time schedule, we will revisit the possibility of constructing next year? You're building it next door? But I'm happy to hear that, because I had suggested that it could perhaps be. But Hinesbury Road is a large area. Country Road, Passage Road. It connects with the city constituency, Greenfields. You know these areas, Mrs. P., you're an urban man. These are large areas, lots of people and lots of young people, lots of potential for trouble too. And it would be good if we could have a facility like that done there. Now, Mr. Speaker, when we're looking at things, sporting activity is a builder of character. Much of your character formation, I would want to assume, resulted from your involvement in sports. I would want to assume. I'm assuming two things: that there's strong character formation, and that it resulted from your involvement in sports. As a young boy, Mr. Speaker, I ran all over Waterford Plantation area. You now have, or you used to have, a playing field there. It has now become an area occupied by a lot of people who are squatting out of necessity and driven to that type of existence. But that was a sugarcane field. But there was enough space around that boys could find to play some cricket on what we used to call the Carrot Hill. I spent a lot of my days running around Cumber Pasture, playing cricket and football. And in District A, when District A police station had a pasture area on the inside, it's all now concreted and buildings. The guys used to run around and play in there. And all I'm saying is, we grew up as young boys, Mr. Speaker, engaging in sporting activities, formally and informally. I would like to think that that has helped significantly to make you what you are, and to make the Honourable Member for St. Lucie what he is, and to make me, in part, what I am. It is a builder of character. It is also a counter, Mr. Speaker, to social conflict, which is on the rise among young people. It certainly facilitates and helps to gender community cohesion. We're losing a lot of that. What we're seeing in its place is community scarring and community erosion. But there was a time when sporting activity brought communities together. Of course, there's a health-related advantage as well. We say now we have a young person, we say now we have a young child with a health profile which speaks significantly of obesity and all that brings in its way. And perhaps children today, even at school and in the formal and in the informal arena, are not playing enough together. I'm saying sports is a really important thing. So this is not for me, and I would not begrudge any district that gets a recreational facility, and certainly will not begrudge Workman's, and certainly will not begrudge your member of St. George South, because this sporting thing is important. It seems to me that we're losing the instinct, the impulse for it among our young people and our children today. Perhaps it's the presence of the technology, perhaps it's the dynamics operating in the community that create that disposition that you want to stay away from certain situations. But this sporting thing is very, very, very important. I'm sure, Mr. Speaker, you're a humble man, and you have learned the virtue and value of humility in ascendancy. You learn that in sports. You win the game, you are in ascendancy, but you learn humility. I think what we learn from the outside world in much of what we see in media sports is that the big-headedness is there. The swell-headedness is there. But I think in my time and in your time, which I think is the same era, give or take a few years, advantage being on my side, I think, seriously, I seriously do think that you learn the sense of humility in ascendancy. So when you're on top, you don't kick a man because he's down, because you've ascended, because you come out on top. You don't see that as being such an advantage that you ride on that wave and you care nothing about the other fella. You learn also resilience and what I call bounce back ability in sports. You get beat badly, but you're back the next day to challenge and to compete and to contest and perhaps to win. But you learn that spirit of resilience. We need that in life. In all of life's situations, we need that. Some of my colleagues here will lose their seats in the next election. And hopefully, out of that experience, they would find that spirit of resilience, that bounce back ability that will bring them back to the polls again to offer themselves. But I have lost already, and here I am again. I know what resilience is with respect to that. I know what bounce back a bit. I'm talking to those, through you, Mr. Speaker, to those who are new and here for the first time. And in a short time from now, they will lose. And they have to find in them the spirit of resilience, the ability to bounce back and to win. And that when you win, you take it in your stride and you don't get carried off and become all swell-headed. You learn the sense of team with sports. Are these things important for our young people? Are these things important for our children? Are these things important for our community? Conflict resolutions. We got guys now want to be very hostile and violent with each other. In our day, Mr. Speaker, we had our little spits and spats, but we were not this hostile and not that violent and not that expressive in terms of the anger that we demonstrated. The worst we perhaps would have done was pick up the ball that belonged to me and go on home, or pull the stumps because they're mine and go on home. Nowadays, the conflict is rife, and the way it manifests itself, expresses itself very so. Sports, therefore, to me, helps significantly with respect to that. You learn to optimize the available resources. Don't building character. You're not just dropping down a pavilion in Fustic. Talking about building character. You learn to optimize, maximize the use of what limited resources are available to you. You know the things you played football with, things you played cricket with, Mr. Speaker. Fellas today won't play cricket and football with those things. But we had a bare minimum, and we made do. And in life, sometimes you have just the barest minimum. What do? You don't throw up your hand and give it. No. You learn the value of what you have, you cherish what you have, and you optimize or maximize use. Learn to share that which is yours. It is a counter to the spirit of selfishness or self-centeredness, out of which a lot of our problems come. You learn, Mr. Speaker, that reward does not properly come without effort. The tendency now, the disposition, the mindset now is to take shortcuts at every level of society. How fast can I get there? What shortcut can I take? But you learn in sports that reward does not properly come without the effort that you put into what you're doing. And that talent, Mr. Speaker, is not everything. Temperament is also important. And a lot of us as adults would do well to learn that it's not only about skill and talent, but temperament, the disposition, the mindset, the attitude that you bring to life's situations, sense of community. I didn't plan to speak this long, but all I'm saying here, Mr. Speaker, we need to allow our people to manage these facilities We need to properly locate them for the right reasons. We need to remember St. Michael West in our agenda and in our planning. We need to recognize the value of sports. It builds character, helps to resolve some of the conflicts and the tensions out there, creates community cohesion. They're very positive things. So I don't know that anybody in here will begrudge the effort at Workman's.
I remember for
Don't be
St.
shy.
George South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me join this debate that speaks directly to Quarrenland for a wonderful village and the wonderful people of Workman's in that wonderful parish of St. George and that wonderful constituency that I represent so dearly, St. George South. I also want to start by thanking the member for St. Lucie and also the member for Christchurch West, who journeyed with me to St. George over a year or so ago. And I want to set the record straight that this acquisition predates us as a government. And indeed, studies were done to determine the suitability and the placement of this, what I call not a recreational facility, but a resource facility. Because we are siting or acquiring half acre of land. And to bring some perspective into it, and so that we understand certain aspects. To put a playing field on 0.5 acres to play a cricket game or a football game, I see the speaker smiling. You need at least 2.5 acres for cricket, minimum, sometimes 4, and you need a minimum of 1.5 acres for football. And the history, I don't want to go back into saying that the last administration, even though I will be telling the truth, poo-poo upon this acquisition. But I don't want to focus there. We're looking to the future, and this government is about building communities, building a sense of self-identification and caring for each other. And that's where it all starts, within communities. Social identification within communities. And this resource facility, and I hope I have cleared up the fact that it is not a playing field, but it is a resource facility, a community center that will have a hard court attached to it. And that hard court will cater to various sporting disciplines of netball and football and volleyball and whatever, road tennis. These are some of the sporting disciplines that it will cater to. But when you look at the mandate of the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment, the vision is to build a cohesive society, and I agree with the member for St. Michael West in his few words. I agree with him. Build a cohesive society through the empowerment and full involvement of youth and communities in the social and economic development of this country. That's the vision for the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment. And the mission is to increase youth empowerment through development of programs and projects that increase youth engagement. We all mentioned reducing crime and violence, enhancing skills development in communities, and boost employability and employment. And that's the mission. So I articulated both the vision and the mission. This community center at Workman, and I would answer the questions posed by the member for St. Michael West as I speak during my time on my feet. We looked at the facility, and this is what government does. We look at every single jurisdiction, look at the densely populated nature of the facilities in an effort to come up with what is the best solution within communities to empower our people, not only the young people, and the member for St. Lucie mentioned it. not only the young people, but we have seniors too who need to recreate, seniors who need to engage themselves, seniors too suffer from mental health challenges. And I heard the member for St. Michael West alluding to some of these challenges and the need to have facilities. And I will pause here to let him know that, not pause, but I will reference St. Michael West and to let you know that the Minister of Housing, the member for Christchurch West, and also the member for St. Lucie, we have started looking at the Country Road facility where the welfare presently occupies, and next to that is the Prison Fellowship building. And we can talk with you as the parliamentary representative, because we are not leaving any person behind. We are not certain if within 2 years you will still be carrying that portfolio of parliamentary representative for St. Michael West. But nonetheless, we will give you the opportunity to sit with us, to let's discuss what is the best option, or what is the best, what I call policy, or the best implementation plan for that facility, whether it is a resource center, a hard court. When we're looking at the commercial aspect of the city, entrepreneurship, all these things we will sit to you. But more importantly, or most importantly, the whole aspect of the densely populated nature and how many young people are situated in that area. You have the answers, and I know the member for Christchurch West has the answers as well. And probably the member for St. Michael Northeast and St. Michael West Central. That's West Central. So we will sit with you. We are not leaving anyone behind, and you have been elected by the people of St. Michael West to serve them, and we have a duty to ensure that the people from St. Michael West gets its fair share of development within this country. So I just want to clarify, or to bring a little bit of clarity to the statement that you made, what we're doing with the building, and to let you know, whenever you are ready, we will. I am speaking on behalf of the member because we had a little caucus, and he's not speaking in this debate, but he said whenever you are ready, we can sit to discuss the best use of that building to empower the people within St. Michael Northwest, within that section of St. Michael Northwest. St. Michael West, sorry. Now, Mr. Speaker, Workman, in my view as parliamentary representative, Workman, Jordan, Orange Estate, Jericho, Fairview, Milton, and the surrounding districts, there's no facility, training facility, community facility within that jurisdiction, within St. George. It is an area that I can easily say occupies over 1,000 young people. And the nearest recreational facility is within 2 miles from the persons within Jordan's, within that catchment area. And this predates us because the last administration recognized that there was a need to build some form of recreational facility or community center there. Even though I wonder why they chose that area to put a playing field on 0.5 acres, half acre of land. Whether we are playing miniature cricket or miniature golf there, no problem. But for us to have a proper recreational facility, we need 2.5 acres. And the people of Workman, they need a proper recreational facility, and they also need training facility, which we are focusing on. The students at Workman School, the member for St. George North knows very well that they don't have any recreational facility. They have to journey to St. George Parish Church to use the recreational facility there, and of course that's a cost to the school. That's a cost to whoever, and sometimes it's a cost to us because we facilitate certain things. Both the member for St. George North and myself, the school is on our borders. Actually, the school is in St. George North. It's on my border, St. George South. But we spend a lot of time with the school discussing several issues with respect to how we can make that facility one where people are engaged, where we look at entrepreneurial opportunities where we look at the commercial aspect. And when we speak of the commercial aspect, the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment started a building blocks program where we went into communities, and I heard the member again for St. Michael West, but we started this program back in 2018. And today we have built some 15 kiosks across Barbados at 5 locations. And only this morning I was speaking to the member for St. Michael Northwest, and to tell him that his plans that he has agreed upon are on their way to town and country planning for the construction of 5 kiosks at Freehill in St. Michael, where we can truly speak about empowering the young people on the block in terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of small businesses. And the member for St. Michael South, his drawings are already with town and country planning. The member for Christchurch East, the member for the city. And I can go on and on and on to let you know that this year we will start 6 more blocks, and that will give close to 20 entrepreneurs the opportunity to engage in commercial activity. So to answer yet another question from a member for St. Michael West, we are engaged in empowering our guys on the block with a view to solve some of the social challenges that we have. That alone might not solve all of them. But I know that we have some of the programs and the policies, as articulated in this manifesto, that can solve some of the problems. They won't be solved overnight, but it is a work in progress. And when people see that you as a government care about them, this is a caring government, that we can take the average man on the block, some of whom are disengaged, some of whom left school without any certification, and we can give them the opportunity to become businessmen and businesswomen in this country. That speaks a lot. We are leaving no one behind. And I just wanted to answer your second question there. I'm not going to spend my whole time answering your questions, but sports is another discussion. But at the end of the day, we are here to allow, and I agree with you, the whole aspect of sports being an avenue to address some of the challenges and leadership issues that we have, and also to solve some of our social is. I was a cricket captain at that great institution in St. John, the best secondary institution in this country. Some in this room may argue, but it is not an argument. But at the end of the day, being the cricket captain, and the member for St. Philip West just sat on the edge of his seat, and he wanted to jump, but this is not the place for that, sir. Being the captain of the cricket team gave me the opportunity to develop teamwork skills, leadership skills, to deal with difficult situations, to deal with conflict resolution. When a bowler is telling you, I need 2 more, and you're saying to yourself, no, man, I need to try something different. And then when you change that bowler, he gets upset with you, and you have to manage him with a view to make sure that he's not sulking on the field. So I agree with you, member for St. Michael West, that sports is a powerful tool. Nelson Mandela said sports has the potential to unite the world, but it also has the potential to solve a lot of our problems in this country. And we as a government recognize that, as articulated in our manifesto, and we have set about on a path to address some of these issues. So Workman facility may not be able to hold a football field or cricket field, but I, as a parliamentary representative for St. George South, we're looking presently to acquire some land so we can have a field that we can play football, we can play cricket, and we can have some more sporting disciplines to capture most of our young people, and also those who are not so young, because we believe that the time is now for us to really do most of our infrastructural improvement projects. And I want to thank the member for St. Michael. Yes. West Central as well, because he just joined us. Member, I want to thank you, and I'm blowing your trumpet for the work that you are doing for the people of St. George. They knew the member for Christchurch West, but I think you came and you stole the cake, and you know what I'm talking about. And that does not mean they don't love the member for Christchurch West. But we're seeing some development within St. George South, and Workman must get its fair share of development, whether through a community and resource center, through the acquisition of land for a playing field, which I'm working on. And there are some other communities within St. George. The Tods community, we don't have any recreational facility there. And we have close to 200 to 300 young people within Tods. What are parents going to do with these young people at a time like now, when we all are battling with the pandemic, the COVID-19 challenges? We as parents, and we as people, and we as guardians, we need some place for our children to recreate. And I am cognizant of the fact that this government recognizes that, and we are swiftly moving to engage in capital works programs, whether it is in St. Joseph, is in St. Michael, is in St. Philip, is in St. George, to ensure that we don't lose our people to some of these mental health challenges, to ensure that we don't lose our people to some of the obesity challenges that we're confronted with in this world, and not only in Barbados. So I rise today to support this resolution, but also to put things in perspective, because the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment, we have engaged over the years in a number of training programs. And recently, we started this program called Pathways, where young people who are on attacks and who are disengaged, who have left school without any form of certification, they have the opportunity to become employable. So we have engaged in a program called Pathways, where we take our young people over a 5-week period. The first week we treat with personal development training, psychosocial evaluation, and we partner with the private sector, because our aim, after we have done the personal development training with these young people, then we engage the private sector in a get hired program, where they are then taken through an interview process, learning through an internship program, learning the skills that are needed to survive in the world of work. And these are all disengaged, unattached persons who have left school. But why are we focusing on community centers? Why are we spending our time going around Barbados looking at areas where we can build community centers? We have Youth Achieving Results program, where we partner with the Ministry of Culture and Performing Arts program, and drama, dance and voice training. We have the Youth Achieving Results Visual Arts program, where we do calabash art, painting and drawing, leather craft, wood carving, garment construction. And I can go on and on. The Next Step Training Initiative, where we provide the second chance training opportunities to unemployed youth, where we are looking at training persons in renewable energy, maintenance and installation of renewable energy, robotics, coding, 3D printing. The National Cultural Training Program, we are training these persons in the cultural arts across Barbados. So one asks, where are we going to execute these programs? And we are going to execute these programs at community centers. Why? When we look at Samuel Jackman Prescott Institution, we have partnered with Samuel Jackman Prescott Institution with the Next Step Training Initiatives. And this year we have enrolled some 100 young boys and girls in renewable energy training, maintenance and installation of renewable energy systems. Over 100. But you realize that SJPI, the capacity of SJPI, if we are truly to empower the 60,000 young persons we have in this country under the age of 35, if we are truly to empower and make the 4,000 school leavers that we have in this country annually employable, we have to engage in satellite stations across Barbados. I call them satellite stations, let's say satellite facilities, where we can partner with the Barbados Vocational Training Board and the Samuel Jackman Prescott Institution to give our young people a second chance and the opportunity to become employable, the opportunity to learn a skill so that they can become entrepreneurs, become innovative, so that we can move this country from focusing only on a labor market country where we look at low-end jobs, to a design and an innovative market where we then shift the focus. I'm not saying to leave out the labor market focus. I am saying the time has come that we have to shift our thinking and create some young millionaires in this country. So that whole design and innovative shift for our young people, we have to give them those skills within those assets that we call community centers. Because we don't have all the space at SJPI, and let me pause here to say SJPI, the Samuel Jackman Prescott Institution, and the Barbados Vocational Training Board, they are both doing an excellent job in rolling out some young people who are taking this world by the storm. We just had some young men and women who came out of Samuel Jackman Prescott Institution. They performed within the visual arts program, community training. They were able to start their own business in automotive painting. The other group were able to start their own business in providing signs across Barbados. They partnered with the Ministry of Transport and Works to provide signage in St. Peter. And recently, the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment engaged that same group in to provide signage at Sky Mall. And these are signage stating, parking allocated for the permanent secretary, admin officer, unauthorized vehicles should not be parked here. And that is a business that was started through the program, the partnership between the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment and the Ministry of Education. So we are doing whatever it takes to capture the imagination and to capture the attention of our young people in this country, to make them global citizens. And we believe that young people in this country, they have the energy and the creativity to solve most of our problems and to make Barbados the best place to live, work, do business, raise a family, and as we say, a place of good vibes. But some of the naysayers, we have to stop talking about we have lost a generation and that young people are this and young people are that. But I find when we engage the youth, you get ideas, you get problem-solving ideas. You get persons who are interested in leadership. We just performed a week of activities, Youth Week, and we ended off with a church service on Sunday. And those of you who witnessed it, CBC carried it live. That church service, the planning of that church service, every single aspect of the planning of that church service was done by young officers within the ministry, all under the age of 25 years old. The minister did not get involved. The permanent secretary did not get involved. I showed up and I was asked to say a few words, and so I did. But it was an exceptional performance by the young people. And that is why I will repeat that young people have the creativity and the energy to solve some of these problems, most of the problems within this country. But we have to give them the avenues and the facilities where they can engage in meaningful activity. Sorry, Mr. Speaker. We engage in a national summer camp program annually. COVID has impacted it. We provide some 45 camps to accommodate over 3,500 to 4,000 campers annually. And we spend, as a government, and I must make this clear, before coming to office, summer camps cost millions of dollars. Millions of dollars by the last administration to host a summer camp. But we brought back the spirit of volunteerism by communities member for St. Michael West, where persons within the communities were empowered to come and run the camps. That is what we're talking about, and I agree with you, Honourable Member for St. Michael West. We were able to run the summer camps through a process called volunteerism that left this country for some 10 years, whereby people were disengaged. They didn't want to be part of any process because everything was about money and the fatted calf, wastage. And we were able to reduce millions of dollars to turn our summer camp program into a $250,000 budget with some 45 camps. But I'm proud to say to the people of Workman, whenever the government, and I'm hoping we have acquired the land, but I'm hoping that we'll be able to build that facility sometime soon. Because then you can become one of the facilities that can host a summer camp. And as the member for St. Michael West said, the community will run the camp, persons from the community. And that is what we have done since we came to office. We have engaged community leaders and community-minded persons to create the programs, peer-to-peer mentorship, where we take young people within community, the leaders. We train some annually. We train over 120 youth leaders within communities and community groups annually. So Workman, once this facility is built, and I am asking my honourable colleagues to ensure that Workman gets this facility soonest, the Minister of Finance, and I know wherever she is and she hears me, Workman is a place that she frequents as well, and she's loved by the people of Workman. So I am putting in a plug to have this facility built in the next financial year, the year 2022-2023. But Mr. Speaker, on a broader theme, the whole aspect of addressing mental health challenges in this country, we have a number of young persons who are at home doing what I call Zooming. My son and I, we call it Zooming. We have fun. He Zoomed too. But I have to find a way, and I speak as a parent, I had to find a way to motivate that young man, that 13-year-old son that I have. And I can use myself as an example. It was challenging working as a parent, both parents working, and having to call on help. Sometimes the little boy, he wants to see his parents there with him. He's Zoom schooling, and he said to us one morning, he woke up and he dressed for school, the St. Michael school uniform. And I asked him, where are you going? He said, I am going to school. I'm going to sit down at that computer. Daddy, this is driving me crazy. And I'm using myself as an example. And I only have one child. So I'm saying to you, through you, Mr. Speaker, that parents need places where they can let off the steam, where they can recreate, where they can deal with some of these mental health challenges. And I know, Honourable Member for St. Michael West, I know you signed this manifesto, and you know that's what you spoke so glowingly with respect to with respect to the role of community centers and the role of sports. You know, you signed it, and I know you know everything that is in here with respect to our social programs and our policies with respect to solving some of the mental health challenges. I agree with everything you said. Everything you said in here this morning, I agree with. So our community centers, that was not said, that was struck from the record. So I can't agree with it with something that is not part of the debate. That is not part of the debate. I am referencing what you said in relation to the debate, because that was struck from the record. But we have within us over 37 community centers. And that is not enough. When we look across Barbados, there's a dearth of facilities where we can engage in information technology training. I mean, that has taken over the world now. You know, we have a computer technology program that has gone as far as North Africa, South Sudan. We engaged in online computer technology last year. But when we came to office, let me back up. When we came to office in 2018, the computer technology program attracted 1,300 persons between the ages of 15 and 50. In 2019, it attracted 2,000. COVID came, and the impact of COVID and its mitigating measures, you know what I mean, forced us to have the computer technology training program administered online, but still at community centers. But when we advertise online, the program, I don't want to use the word oversubscribe, but we were able to attract over 5,000 persons. And I said 3 persons from North Africa, South Sudan, came online with this program. And they also congratulated the government of Barbados. They sent a message, a video recording to the government, thanking them for bringing this program. But it gets more challenging because we have a number of young persons, and I started discussing the whole mental health issues. COVID, persons have lost their jobs. The member for St. Lucie alluded to it in his speech. Parents, electricity bills skyrocketing. 1 month they can't pay. They are juggling between water, light, and other bills. Some persons who are below the line with respect to earnings have had their electricity cut off. And the young people, their children. I know parents will go hungry for days, but what will challenge parents and what will get to parents and will have mental health challenges among the parents is if their children go hungry for days. And we have had situations in this country, thanks to this government, we have intervened, and we continue to intervene. The parliamentary representatives, including the member for St. Michael West, this is not political now. This is real. We all have intervened in solving some of these social problems within households to keep families together. Because families begin to crack. The whole fragment, begins to tear apart when there are financial issues among not only those from a low socio-economic background, but from the wealthy too. When financial issues creep into families, you see the cracking within that fabric in the family. And we have had to intervene. But we are seeing a number of young boys and girls in this country. Presently, I am driving around with 3 tablets. This evening, I have to journey to certain places in St. George to distribute these 3 tablets. Because some young people don't have the wherewithal to. and parents to purchase tablets. But it gets worse. When you have the tablet and your
Member has
electricity,
2 more minutes.
thank you, Mr. Speaker. When you have the tablets and your electricity get cut off, what happens to your child in the home environment? So we believe that the community centers at this time, even more so than ever, should be a place where our young people can go and log on, get online, Google Classroom. Yes, we have to make sure that we don't have it crowded, we have to social distance. But we still believe that that's the place now that we have to rescue some of our young people so they can have the opportunity to learn in this country, to an education, a decent education in this country. So I, Mr. Speaker, endorse this resolution for my people in Workman. I support it wholeheartedly. And I'm asking that the powers that be would see it fit in the next financial year to have this facility built, a state-of-the-art facility where we can engage in robotics, 3D printing, renewable energy, coding, all of the new frontiers that can give us the opportunity that our persons can be innovative, more innovative, and become true global citizens. I am not throwing out the needlework and the cake making and the icing and stuff for the cakes. I am not throwing that out, and the caning for the chairs. But I'm saying within the whole labor market concept, we have done well. But we now need to push the envelope to the design market concept and the innovation market concept for jobs worldwide. So, Mr. Speaker, with those words, I want to thank the member for Christchurch West and the member for St. Lucie for bringing this important resolution for the people of Workman and Jordans and Fairview and Jericho and the surrounding districts. And it is with God's wishes, blessings on us, that we can build this facility in the next financial year. I'm obliged, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable for Christchurch South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm obliged to you. Admittedly, Your Honor, when I came here today, I was expecting to speak on a different matter, so that if you find me a little unprepared, it is because on my way to a more comfortable seat, the Honourable Member for St. George South intercepted me and told me that he is insisting that I should speak in support of a matter of great importance to his constituency. And this is sometimes a brotherhood, and I do not object to speaking as requested and suggested by my colleague, beg your pardon, on a matter that pertains to his constituency. One may think that it is parochial, but there's an aspect to this resolution that is not so parochial after all. It relates itself to the question of an acquisition of a small area of land for the purpose of recreation. Now, I will begin anecdotally and say to you, Your Honor, that when I first went to primary school, apart from the classes and the rigor of those classes, sometimes on Friday afternoons they would take us out into the playground and tell us, this is a games afternoon. And that activity was disjoined from the more rigorous classroom activity. And it was only when I went to secondary school that the language changed. They were no longer calling it a games afternoon. They were calling it physical education. And that terminology was a reminder to us then that recreation was to be considered a part of the curriculum of education. And that is important. That is rooted in certain Romano-Greek traditions, in that when the Greeks spoke to you of education, they spoke to you similarly as did my secondary school. You did your tuition in the classroom, the traditional subjects, But then when you retired to the recreational area, still it was considered a part of education. And that is in keeping with the Romano-Greek tradition of education, embracing not only the strict curriculum of maths and English, but that it extended itself to the physical aspects of a child's development. And that is important. Now, when this matter found expression in the English grammar schools, and I say this because we are a part of that tradition, whether we like it or not, we are a part of that tradition that finds itself historically connected to those parts of the world, to those parts of the beginnings of what we call Western civilization. And a similar practice was carried out in the English grammar schools, if we may call them that, in that physical activity and physical education and physical expression was considered as important as the classroom idea of education. Indeed, in the British secondary schools, grammar schools we call them, there was a language which emerged, and admittedly that language associated itself with the snobbery that existed in that society. It was said that those persons, the poorer persons in Britain who expressed themselves physically, who played in the streets, they call that games. They refer to that as games. Those were street games. But when that activity was expressed within the British grammar school, they called it a sport. And so the language reflected the snobbery that existed in that society. Still, the British, the English, in keeping with the Greeks and the Romans, considered physical activity to be a part of the entire process of education. And when they became adults, when young men became adults and expressed themselves on the field of sport, there was again that class snobbery that was associated with games and sport. There were some men who did it for a living, and they called themselves professionals. And those better off persons who played games and perhaps played them as well, they called themselves amateurs. And there was a certain snobbery associated with the two terms. The amateurs looked down on the professionals. As I said before, amateurs were really saying, I do this because I am good at it. You do this because you want to make a living. And indeed, there was a time in which I think golf was played. There was a separate competition for amateurs, and there was a separate competition for professionals. And here was the amateur saying to the professional again, I do this because I am good at it, I wish to do it. But not only was he saying that he did it because he was good at it, he was saying that he was doing it as an expression of the evolution of ideas of character. And there was the recognition that sport related itself to character building. I think I heard the Honourable Member for St. Michael West refer to the element of character building within sport. So that if one derives any positive from that history, it is a recognition that sport or games, whichever term we use, is related to character building. And that is why these resolutions are so important. That is why it is important for a government to reserve spaces, not only for housing, not only for other areas of social activity, but importantly, to reserve areas for recreation, even in a pandemic. I want to, if I may become parochial now on behalf of the Honourable Member for St. George South, when I'm driving home on afternoons, sometimes I choose the more picturesque route. I don't know if Map Hill is a part of his constituency, but I see. Map Hill, when I'm driving along Map Hill, there's this large playing field and pavilion. And I see something that is quite rare in Barbados these days. I see children on the playing field playing, and I say, but this is not usual. The more usual activity now is to see empty playing fields and to imagine that the children are indoors playing the computer games and so on, I pause to remind Your Honor of the trauma that visited Barbados yesterday when they lost Facebook and WhatsApp. Yeah, that seems to have traumatized the world. I don't know if the children do WhatsApp and Facebook and the other things as well, but the world became traumatized yesterday afternoon when there was no longer any access to this technological phenomena. And that is a reminder again of the importance of recreation, outdoor recreation, having young people come into contact with each other, having young people come into wholesome social intercourse. The English used to say in their schools, it builds character. It leads us to the concept of team. Sport teaches children to associate with each other as a collective and with the concept of team. And that is important. In fact, if one wishes to say, one may also say that sport molds, and it sounds cliche, but it is true. Sport molds a person's character so that he appreciates the importance of the other person. He appreciates that the other person is as important as he or she is. And indeed, if we can transfigure that into what we do, the concept of team leads to concepts of democracy, equal participation, and so that this is the importance of recreation. This is the importance of sport. Of course, in my brief intervention here, I will say, as Plato said, while on the subject of democracy, show me a democracy and I'll show you a tyranny in the making. Now, whoever is the minister responsible, I think it is my friend from St. Lucie and my colleague from Christchurch West. I don't think you're tyrants. I've heard my friend from St. George South boast that he was able to do these tours with you, and therefore this resolution finds real expression today. And since there is no tyranny in the making in this democracy, I want to recommend to you a visit to a part of Barbados called Carter's Gap in Christchurch. And this is not to intimidate you, but I have spoken to the chairman of your cabinet, the Prime Minister, and informed her that there's a place called Carter's Gap in Christchurch. Now, the east of my constituency is not well blessed with many recreational areas. And that Carter's Gap area contains a large tract of land. And I have proposed to the Prime Minister that this area be acquired, not only for young men to play football, not only for men a little older to play cricket, but for old persons to recreate. Yes. I foresee that in the future our recreational areas will embrace older persons, because when we think of recreation, we tend to think only of persons 35. I think that's the UN designation of youth, 35 and under. Let us extend our recreational areas to embrace the older folk, even if they come out and play dominoes or worry, sit under a tree, even at midday, even at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and engage in wholesome social intercourse. Carter's Gap offers that ideal location to change the lives of those persons who live there. Incidentally, it's in my constituency. I think I may have said that. And I thought I would seize the opportunity while supporting the resolution for my good friend from St. George South. Those people are so well represented, those people in St. George South, that I was, and I am happy that he intercepted me and asked me to support it. He reminded me that in 2013, when he held his first meeting, I'm really not supposed to be this brazenly partisan in here, but forgive me, Your Honor. He reminds me that the first meeting he held, I was the first speaker in a place called Jordan. And all Christians love a journey to Jordan. I've had the pleasure of immersing myself in the other Jordan, in the east, in Israel. But it was a pleasure to come to Jordan that night. I got lost after I didn't know where I was going. But all that gives me pleasure to support this resolution and gives me the confidence, as I said, Your Honor, that they will, these ministers, these good ministers, all two of them, urged on by their Prime Minister, will find their way to the constituency of Christchurch South and come to Carter's Gap, and they and I and all of us will do a survey of that land, not a survey like the professionals do, but a visual survey of the land, and they will find that it is so fit for recreational development. So with those words, I support the resolution. I support this government in its initiative to do good by the people of Barbados. I am obliged to you, sir.
Honourable for St. Michael Northwest.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I take this opportunity to give my support and to endorse this resolution that was laid in this honorable house by the honorable member for St. Lucie. Sir, when people don't have anything to do with their time, they are more likely to get involved in trouble and crime. And how do we as a government intervene, Mr. Speaker, sir? We intervene by increasing the number of resource centers across this island to benefit the youth across the various communities. Sir, having more resource centers will allow this government to create more opportunities for our young people and people in general, Mr. Speaker, sir, to embrace. Sir, I can say that I am fortunate and blessed to have a resource center situated in my constituency. And I have utilized the Deacon's Resource Center, sir, to execute various programs since being elected to office to benefit my constituents, Mr. Speaker, sir. In 2019, sir, I had joined hands with the Ministry of Youth and Community Empowerment in association with the Northwest Alliance Foundation, and we executed a cosmetology program at the Deacon's Resource Center. Sir, to mention, it was a successful program that benefited around 20 to 25 young aspiring cosmetologists between the ages of 16 to 29 years old, Mr. Speaker, sir, who had the opportunity to learn a skill in nail technology and makeup. Presently, I have an educational program ongoing at the Deacon's Resource Center, the Northwest Alliance Foundation Literacy After School Program presently benefits those children who attend primary and secondary schools, providing assistance, sir, in various subject areas such as composition, comprehension, reading, and mathematics are being offered at the Resource Center. Sir, these are just some of the ways how more resource centers across this island can benefit the good people of this country. And I also wish to take this opportunity to ask the goodly minister, the honorable member for St. George South, to make good use of the Deacon's Development Center that sits idle, which I don't agree with. And I need to see the Deacon's Development Center, Mr. Speaker, sir. I really need to see that center benefiting the sporting community within my constituency. My constituency consists, sir, of a lot of sportsmen and women, from football to cricket, to road tennis, to table tennis. Sir, just to mention a few of the sports. And I need to see the Deacon's Development Center become the home of sports in St. Michael Northwest, Mr. Speaker, sir. I need it active and not idle, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I would like to ask the present Minister of Youth and Sports and Community Empowerment to kindly transform the Deacon's Development Center for me. Thank you, sir, on behalf of my beloved constituents, sir. And, sir, I fully support this resolution, and I really hope that this good government with the good leadership of our good Prime Minister, will continue to really create more opportunities to really benefit the youth and the people in this country. I thank you, sir.
Honourable Member for St. Philip North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I begin to support the resolution, I want to congratulate the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest. He proved to me today that you really don't have to keep a lot of noise too often to be getting work done. And I congratulate you. Proud of you.
Thank you.
I do obviously support the resolution. One cannot help but support the resolution, and I congratulate the honourable members for St. Lucie and for Christchurch West. However, like many of the members here, I'm begging for consideration of the youth, and it's not necessarily my constituency here, of the youth, the young people to the eastern side of the island, the rural areas of the island. Oftentimes we see sporting facilities, adequate for sporting facilities. The one coming to mind especially is the aquatic center. Now, Mr. Speaker, the schools and the members of the more urban areas have benefits. They have it on their school curriculum with respect to using the aquatic center for learning swimming. The Honourable Prime Minister said, even during the campaign, that she would love to see every child in Barbados being able to swim. The residents of the rural areas, the children of the rural areas, find it difficult to be a part of this program at the Aquatic Center. The truth is, the time it takes for a school in my constituency, the children to travel from St. Catherine, St. Mark, St. Philip to the Aquatic Center, load in a bus, travel down there, get a chance to settle, swim, and get back up. Almost the whole school day is gone. And we were asked at some point to propose ideas for our constituencies. And one of the things, and it's big dreams, but there's nothing wrong with dreaming big, is the establishment of a recreational facility. And I'm thinking big here, a large enough area where we can incorporate a pool, we can incorporate facilities for dancing. The talk is on health and the NCDs, but one of the devices that the physiotherapists may use is actually exercise in a pool. And I think it's about time that whether it be in St. Philip or St. John or St. Joseph, all these areas are close to St. Philip, even St. George, that a big enough facility be constructed to include these things which are badly needed. For a while I was looking around trying to figure out where on earth the children of St. Philip North can participate in dancing. I have somebody on board that's willing and ready to start, but we don't have the facilities. We were blessed, and that's quote unquote, with the the St. Mark's Resource Center. And Mr. Speaker, to be truthful, it's really not fit for purpose. I don't know if you've ever visited the building. There's a platform in place. You can't see it from most of the ends of the community center. You can't even access visually the platform of the community center. There are dance groups that work there. There's no space. You pass and you see, before COVID, people spilling onto the veranda and into the yard. Is not good enough. And I know this administration was not responsible for the building of that, but it's really not fit for purpose. For a little while now, the honourable member for St. George South would have heard me on this, as well as the honourable member, my partner in crime here, for honourable member for St. Philip West. There has been the beginning of a hardcore at the same St. Mark's Resource Centre in Three Houses Hill. I have been begging for the completion of the hardcore. It's got to a point where you can barely find it. It had been starting, and I am begging for the completion of the hardcore. Everybody speaks about pastures for cricket and football. The truth is, women don't participate in these areas very often. Yes, we have a cricket team and so on, but women don't participate. It would be helpful to have at least a netball court on board where you could do basketball, netball, road tennis, as one of the members mentioned earlier. We need the facility. To be honest, we need the facility. We need space. We need to be counted in this whole game. of providing recreational facilities for the rural parishes and districts. We need to be counted. And while I spoke about the aquatic center and swimming, I'm going to put a plug. I see other members veered away a little bit from the topic, and I will do so now. I'm putting a plug for the aquatic center. I am very concerned about the aquatic center being open during this COVID time. The children huddle in the pool, and I am very, very worried. I spoke to at least one of the coaches there who's very, very worried about keeping the aquatic center open during this time, and I am asking for this area to be reviewed with respect to temporary closing or finding somewhere for distancing to happen at the aquatic center. It is worrying me, and I use this opportunity to say that no, ideas. You often complain, yes, but I like to offer ideas with respect, which I have done just now, with respect to how we can develop St. Philip for one, and in turn the other rural parishes. But as I was saying, I put forward a submission in terms of how to develop out this thing. And the Honourable Member for St. Michael's South East proudly announced the acquisition or the oncoming acquisition of land for the St. Mark's Primary School, which is over 2 acres. Many do not know that, but I was at the forefront of actually speaking to the people who were willing to volunteer, and I'm going to pat myself on the back. It took a lot of doing, and they have graciously agreed to do so. This is one of the areas, if we get it started, that we can use 2 point something acres of land. This is one of the areas where we can actually see some of these things developing. Sports is important, as every member here has already said. Sports is important. We need to start thinking like countries like Jamaica with respect to developing our sports program to the end that people can make a living off of them. Jamaica takes it seriously. Why haven't we gotten there as yet? It's coming, and I congratulate the Honourable Member for St. George South on it, but it needs to get here quickly. We have people that are getting into universities and so on, but just do not have the funding. With respect to culture, as I said last week, there's a young man in my constituency got into a university in New York for arts, cannot get the funding to get there. But yet we sit here every week or every other week or however long, how often sports come and we talk how sports is developing, but we cannot get the funding. You can get the funding for somebody that has done well in maths, in physics and maths and the scholarships, but where's the funding for arts programs and accessible funding that we know about, and sports programs? These things we need to look at. And it's now a time where, as I said, sports needs to be taken seriously. We are still at this stage in our schools where teachers actually punish children by telling them they can't have games. And they use games because children think it's games. Where they can't have games for whatever reason, it's used as a source of punishment. This can't happen. Nobody will use mathematics as a source of punishment, or English or science as a source of punishment. We have to go beyond that and realize that PE, games, is just as important as any other subject in this island, especially where we stand on the non-communicable diseases. So we need to look at that seriously on that in terms of putting it as a source of punishment. I listened to some of the members. Yes, I'm proud of your programs that involve cooking and art, craft, and so on. But it's now time, although we need those, it's now time to bring the community centers a little bit more forward in terms of introducing more current and, as I might say, sexy programs into the system. Women don't only want to know about icing cakes at this point in time. Women don't only want to know about making doilies for the center table. We want to know about information technology. We want to know about courses on investing what little money we have, on how banking works, on how to apply for jobs, on how to save money. We need on budgeting, on how to be good parents. We need to get these things incorporated. The days of learning how to ice cakes, and they're still relevant, but these things have been taken over by the bigger companies that are now moving in the bakeries, which I won't call them names, the bakeries and so on. We have to be realistic in what we need to teach our young people here. And I encourage us to bring these things on board and include people. The elderly people need to be included. You will be surprised walking around communities that people over 65, 67, the retirement age, are eager to get out, and eager to dance, and eager to be in drama, and eager to join a folk group. And we have to include it. They're part of the community. It's not only young people, but the elderly are part of our communities that we need to fight for, include. Yes, I think, I can't remember who's the honourable member for the leader of the opposition, but communities, as I understand it, are responsible, at least the private ones, are responsible for maintaining their facilities, the parks, for instance. And I would like that looked at. We have some developments, governmental developments, where people bought the properties. For instance, parish land is one. And the people in that area, for instance, are begging and requesting for an area where a park could be set up. Right now, I pass through there almost on a weekly basis, and children, you have to stop the car. Children, like days of old, are playing in the streets, cricket, and balls coming at your car, and people speeding through the district. We need dedicated areas in some of these developments. What is it called? Nightingale Drive? Not Nightingale, it's opposite Nightingale, but the parish land development, I forget the name of it now. That one, Carpenter's Glade. There needs to be dedicated areas that is cordoned off for children to play, for people to walk around safely without risk of injury. I see, and I can't help but comment on it because I thought it was a beautiful idea. I'm not sure if it is Sir Charles Williams that did it, but in St. George, an area, where is that called? Salters? Almost a walking path is constructed through an area that traditionally was a campground, but I thought that was it's private, but I thought that was such a beautiful initiative. It is Barber Green, and people can walk safely off the road. Maybe we could think of that with respect to other parishes. We don't have these sidewalks, and I know it would be costly, but what's it called? A train line cycle path. I really don't care what you call it, because it won't apply to every parish. But we need dedicated areas like this where people can walk safely. Right now, yes, with the lockdowns that we had and the limiting we have on the road, people are scared of walking the streets. I used to feel safe in St. Philip because at the time, the population was not as high as it was now. Everybody's driving a car, and even from 5 o'clock in the morning, the traffic is out there. You have the exhaust fumes to deal with. We need to think about areas like this, to set up trails where you can walk safely and freely, lighted areas where you can walk safely and freely, because exercise is no longer a daytime activity now. But with the crime situation, that might be another story. So, Mr. Speaker, I won't take any more of your time up, but these are issues which I think are relevant and we need to work on. And I thank all the members that are here. I think everybody has something good to say today, including my good friend in front of me, the leader of the opposition, and I think we need to study it and make some strides towards getting these areas fixed. Thank you so much.
Honourable Mr. Michaelis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I heard some of the contributions while I was on my way here. And I was inspired by them, but most of them were a reflection of all that we have had over the last few years. People spoke about the intention to increase the amount of sporting facilities across Barbados in specific areas. Other persons lament that they don't have facilities in specific areas and ask that they be accommodated in the circumstances. I want to look at the resolution in a different manner. Although initially it is about the acquisition of land for sporting activities is the acquisition of land in order to provide options for me, for my people, to be able to moralize the leisure time, to be able to go outside of the traditional options that are available to them. In some cases, options that are not so wholesome. The reality is that based on the both external and internal dynamics that are influencing the youth in this country, there's a necessity for us to step back. Don't even attempt to use traditional terminology because you get captured you get captured by the traditional terminologies. I was just hearing a specific member of the House speaking, and he has special language required for description. But if we are really creative thinkers, we can say the same thing without using the same words, because you become more like a parrot, or you become more like a mechanical entity when you have to be guided by those traditions. And all that is happening around us now with climate change, with COVID and all these things, tell us that we have to look at creating a new physical environment in every space that is available to us in order to suit the dynamics of the changes that we're experiencing. I personally believe that we have not had an equitable distribution, and it's no fault of any specific persons, because most of the sporting facilities across Barbados, and in some cases we limit the understanding of these facilities because of the words that we use again, sporting facilities and things of that nature. It's not about sporting facilities alone. It is about those facilities being able to facilitate all the activities that we normally and spontaneously would be concerned about, but also about activities that other people believe that are not part of our culture. And sir, I want to say this because up to the 1950s, we were running about behind balls in cricket. When other people were playing cricket across Barbados, all that we could do is to run around the playing field and catch the ball and throw it back on. So you had all these things all around Barbados. And you come in there. You had Spartan, and Calton, and Wonders, and all of these institutions around Barbados. And black men then, black men then felt that the sports itself, they were no part of the integral part of the activity. So they stood on not only on the mental periphery, but also the physical periphery, on the boundaries, catching balls and spelling them back in for other people to enjoy these things. And the mindset was so damaged that we had black men going into South Africa, calling themselves honorary whites. No, we are not at that stage. We are talking about a Republican form of government. We are saying that even at 1966, we did not go far enough, and that we will never get there to the extreme point. The ultimate point is always going to be a battle generation after generation. Now we want to talk about that cricket because they want to make reference to golf. Black boys playing, the caddies, I didn't even know his name. It's so uncommon in my culture. Down on the west coast and across Barbados, people got acres of land when people can't get food or can't get no way to live. Acres of land, roll it out, and got the grass and everything well groomed, and a suffering population see that sport itself as unique and exclusive. I want the Minister of Sports to understand when we talk about creativity. We are debarred from participating in that. Because you all already fall victim to believing that's the norm. That's the norm. So only a few blacks who believe that they made some form of vertical and cultural and social mobility believe that they belong. So they want to preserve the stratification because they become somebody. The Minister of Sports must break that up. They ain't even doing business as usual. They got to break it up. We give the Cali boys the opportunity to demonstrate their creativity by being able to, if they can't buy a golf stick, let the state buy the golf clubs. Oh God, this thing I call we're trying to tell you this is an alien culture to me. But I just try to untangle all this rubbish that's going on in Barbados. Give the Cali boy an opportunity to be able to, if you can't play on the people's private grounds, let the state provide a private ground. I have seen and heard these men saying to me that they are teaching people that have not reached their standards in the area of golf. But they have no opportunity to make money. If you're talking about great, understand the innovation, the creativity of our own people, sir, let the state now, with the facilitator, create the opportunities so that etch your name in history then. That's what I'm saying to you. Etch your name in history by doing something completely different to what some of the people who went there with fixed views in the head of what this institution called community development, sports, because they got fragmented a lot of these things with senior games and junior games and who up to age 35 and all that. You come fresh, open up opportunities for our people. 1958 and those years, so we produced the first great black West Indian cricketer. If you go to Jamaica, if you go to University of West Indies, you're going to see a bus up there of Sir Frank Worrell. People hear about George Headley. Black men that prior to the 1950s could not take up a bat or a ball, and the society accepted. And since then we see Gary Sobers, not only in Barbados, see Larry, and see all kind of the great batsmen and bowlers across the entire Caribbean and even the African continent. England was considered then as the king of the sporting activity called cricket. Even young cricketers need to be inspired to be able to be enriched with a philosophy and an understanding of our history about how we evolve in sporting activities. I heard all kind of things being said about things that we boast about every day. Give people the opportunity. So I just want to throw that in a genuine way, but I also want to say, don't be restricted by something called a community center. It is more than a community center. These community centers are now hijacked by churches on Sundays. In reality, I don't know if there's pay rent to the state or not. But most of the time, when the young people that you're condemning as being delinquent will love to have an opportunity to utilize the facilities, whether you call it a resource center or community center. There are people long before COVID occupying a big building, hundreds of square feet. Got one body in the church beside the bar who call himself a priest. And he holler hard, you go hear. The one, the Ivy, the man's holler hard. Sometimes you can hear all done by Kensington Oval. and young men all around the center want access to come in and play tennis, dominoes, all kind of indoor activities in the centers. On evenings, the public servant going home at 5 o'clock when the young men and women are coming home at 5 o'clock. So all the community or resource center is to the people in the community is a monument. If you go into any of those community centers across Barbados between 8 and 4 o'clock during the day, you cannot see 5 people inside there, unless the National Training Board holding a program, and very, very seldom, or some other private person holding something in the centers. The state has to recognize the realities that we are facing. We have to make some kind of arrangements that some officer must be present in the community centers when the young men and women who are working or who are at school come home or would like to use the centers for wholesome activities. If you don't have those, the church in there talking to one person, converting one person, and 150 persons below can't use the facilities that help to impart the required values to make them the kind of civil persons that we all want them to be. This is madness. We have to find a way of dealing with these things. There need to be some fundamental changes. And I know, Minister, that you would love to do these things because privately we have those kind of discussions, right? But I am not sure if everybody else will embrace them because they might even believe that my expressions on these things are even the reflection of a madman too. But that's what we're dealing with. So you have to have the collective support. Sir, you have facilities, and I know it is most unfortunate that the speaker cannot speak. Sir, you have facilities just above Glandary Prison. And there's a prison now that they give it now to the BTI. So these people got a strange understanding of how development must go. The BTI, you know, I would like to read the what's the mission of the BTI in relation to dealing with this prison. The only thing they can tell me I can do is put it in a museum. Look, we will be grateful for that facility. If there's a community-oriented approach to making use of that morbid place called Glandary Prison, destroy the lives of so many and almost exclusively so many people that look like us. Destroy the lives of these people. These people could not even get an ordinary job as a gardener after leaving those places. Because I want a police certificate. Somebody said, I want a police certificate card for man to cut grass. Officers in government as well telling them you can't get this job working within government because you got locks. I tell you, I am saying nothing. This is not creative imagination. These are experiences. Send them off a job, can't get the job because somebody believes that the man got locks and the man only going to pull weed and cut grass. And in some cases, ministers tell him, if I will get the job, but you got to go and get a hoe. You're talking about youth. Telling the youth, go and get a hoe and a Collins and a chaise and walk down the road for a job. But if you come down the road and you get angry and you chop off a man's hand, you don't know what role you play in the encouraging foolishness in the society. So we got to sit down and think about these things. Opportunities must be provided for the young in Barbados. So that when they come to a community center on evenings and they have an interest not in tennis, table tennis, not in dominoes, but there's a whole cadre of persons who love to see the centers well equipped so that you can have theatrical activities within the centers. And I'm sure the Minister of Culture would be very supportive of this. if we at least had 4 or 5 major centers across Barbados, well equipped with lights for lighting purposes, for cultural activities, proper sound systems, people being trained in videography, assigned to about 4 or 5 strategic locations across Barbados for a start. Writers, people who would write not just to produce novels, but script, plays and script movies. It ain't got nothing to do with the size of the country. I've heard the argument about the credibility of the country on the basis of its size. Yes, but it also relates to the creativity of lots of young people as well. They can become filmmakers, and the state can facilitate that. That is not too costly. Private people, if they've got a genuine interest in being philanthropic, they can help inject money in that. We'll be building an entire community. So help us, if you want me so nice, to put some money in the hands of the ministry. I hope that the ministry has the legal capacity to be able to accept major grants. The state don't always have to give grants to unworthy people. There are lots of unworthy people that end up getting grants from the state, right? But the state can also receive funding to help, especially at a time like this, because if we are trying to take our people out of poverty and allow people to give a freedom, an explosion of freedom to the creative talent of the youth across Barbados, then rather than corporate Barbados just milking the state, every time you look wrong, corporate Barbados milking the state all the time, opportunities must be given for them to demonstrate and get the goodwill sanctioned by the people of Barbados for contributing. You got a big problem. You got young people now whose houses don't have any electricity. During these difficult times, the Minister of Education going to be up there asking for help with an iPad, with a laptop. You want to tell me that the private sector that claim that they're so genuine and really want to help the society develop can't make meaningful contributions and help us in the circumstance? People don't have, they got people like you buy laptops and give them when they get home, they don't electricity, they don't have to plug it in. These are the harsh realities in Barbados. We got talented people. They can play golf. They can make movies. Jamaica making movies. Ghana making movies. It has nothing to do with minerals or the size of the body head. The state can put a policy. Look, the state got to have a policy in place. You don't work off of impulses. You have to have a policy in place for guidance. And I'm going to touch on this too. These things just jumping out. Look, the ministry who just introduces this resolution about land. Up to now, we haven't had any clear policy guidelines coming from the ministry, how they're going to allocate land, why they select land in a specific area, what portion of the land can be allocated to the people directly in the community. Once I used to hear philosophical concepts that the society is densely populated. So I don't want to make the point over and over again. You and I got sandwiched in recent times where people want land. But what input a speaker or backbencher has in identifying the land for the constituents that he represents. We all have to come here and hear when the minister say, I am buying a piece of land in such and such a place. You don't even have the common courtesy of carrying the representative into the area and saying, look, tell me, is there any available land up here? Can we make any approach? We don't have that option. And when the houses are allocated to be constructed on the specific land, the minister can build 2 million houses and get the parliamentary representative 2. 2 million and he get the parliamentary representative. We had that experience in here already, man. I built a whole set of houses, about 8 or something. And the minister, the original minister, belonged to the same government, told me, look, these are for you. Based on the social problems that you have in your community, I am going to give you these houses. And then the other minister come and tell me she's selling all. Oh, I selling all. I said, man, I will carry the minister here to show the minister the land. To help people in my community that don't have anywhere to live. Sleeping in cars. That's where we are. So who blamed all these things? I'm sorry. So I don't mind anybody talking about having facilities in any place, because I agree that sporting facilities are necessary. I agree that housing is necessary. You can't have sporting facilities if you don't have land. So I can understand that, but I don't understand how a policy can be structured from within, and sometimes the parliamentary representatives come in here and got to ask questions, what is the policy? And you probably got to use 2 million words to ask what is the policy. I am not supportive of any minister or any government who builds anything in my community after I got the word as parliamentary representative and the take or the X from the people in my community, and then I standing like a buffoon trying to represent the interests of the community, and then they go out there talking, making people believe there's a big boy in the House Assembly. And in that game. I asking for an opportunity or a new approach to governance too. That we must be included. You don't get 3,000 and 4,000 votes in a constituency and then somebody, because of the ascendancy of power and centralization, push everybody else to the periphery. So the legislation and change must respond to the reality that parliamentarians, based on what they're saying here and what some colors don't want to say here or anywhere, but suffer with stress and heart problems, I saying it. Because I know when you say things that are true and you wrestle with the values. I hear somebody talk about attitudes. But you wrestle with the values of people, though they feel you're a good parliamentarian, they will really love to have you here when you get in here and boy want to see it. And when you express yourself and you tell the truth, people will get you out of here quick. Get you out of here quick. And then you got business people across Barbados. Sorry, I still try to stick to the relevant. You got business people across Barbados who will demonstrate to the Barbadian people after raping the state and accumulating wealth. They want to go behind the scene and dictate the pace. Pull strings, call shots, and make parliamentarians, sir, look like nincompoops, sir. Sorry about that one. My apology. I don't know if it's in any of the dictionaries. But, sir, this is what we are dealing with. We can carry this country forward if people begin to respect honesty. I might write things on a piece of paper, but I don't want to look at it. I just do that because I try to shape some of the facts that I want to highlight and create some framework for what it is I want to say. I personally believe that the Ministry of Housing that introduced this bill, sir, must learn to appreciate other people's opinions. They must also recognize that they are doing something within a constituency and that the parliamentary representative of the constituency ought to have more say than the minister who is responsible for it. Sometimes the minister, nobody don't see a blueprint of what it is that the minister got planned. If I ask some people to come and show me where the land space is, even the parliamentary representative for the area, he don't know. He asked the minister after this resolution has passed, come and show me which part of this piece of land is. Let me see what size center the other minister may go, tell me which size center they can build, that you plan to build in my constituency. These are realities, though. And in the opposition, now you've got the opposition to respond to, go back, the opposition is my friend and probably the friend of the institution as government. So I don't know. So I just got an imaginary person that I hope be able to appreciate my views on this important resolution to the people of St. George. To the people of St. George. And I strongly believe that the minister who represents sports will do his best and will take suggestions from whosoever that are positive suggestions. He was not around in the 1950s to create an opening for Frank World. People like C.L.R. James and those people were talking at that time. And it brings great praise to black people, including C.L.R. James, including Williams, Sir Eric Williams, who in one of his political presentations said clearly, the victory of Frank World is a victory for the PMN. So sports, you don't divorce sports from politics. You don't divorce a writer from politics or government. Some people say you should call politics. And here you got all kinds of strange people in politics too. Right? But you have to be able to appreciate vision. You have to be able to, as an MP in these times, as a minister in these times, you have to be able to understand when somebody tells you, sir, now, look, you can't build a house with a flat roof and put in 2 6-penny nails and believe that when the wind blows that you can cut it, they can still be on. And as long as the body can substantiate what they're saying, it is worthy of listening to. And if you're the minister for housing, it is worthy of you listening to. And if you're the minister of sports, you have to be able to understand what is happening at the community centers. I got one of the biggest pastors in the whole island, Blemmings, named after, the people name it after the estate of Sir Winston Churchill. These people are strange people. I would like to get our name from up in my community. Sir Winston Blemmings. The estate of Sir Winston Churchill. So they name it after Blemmings. It's somebody, it's just like how people got away saying the Rhodes Scholars and all kind of thing. Well, a few years we had a Rhodes Scholar. Rhodes Scholar what? Huh? A racist, a white supremacist, and black people, you've got a Rhodes Scholar. And if you go to that university, you're a more educated person than if you went to a university in Puerto Rico, because you don't understand the history of Puerto Rico. So there's a mindset that we have to deal with now because everything is changing around us. The same way, no, a few years ago, and I got to say this now without any way offending anybody, the Ministry of Education If there's one thing that the Ministry of Education did in the last regime, is when it introduced sixth forms. I was of the opinion that there should never be a sixth form in the secondary school, that all sixth forms should go to the community college, because it was producing greater damage when you were reserving these sixth forms for specific schools. And I lived to see, in less than 2 years, a school that many people felt should not have a sixth form, Grove Sixth Form, Springer Memorial School, perform better than the traditional secondary school. Called these black people are very good at divisiveness, you know. You hear regular. Even people who go to school because of drugs, who's the biggest criminal that ever walked in this sovereignty, the family. They got people who boast about that. So we have to sit back. They have, when, I'm going to say this, when the last party, not that group, not that specific group, I ain't calling them bandits, I ain't calling them nothing, so not that group, but in the 1960s, and to your credit, people like Winter Crawford, prior to 61, these people were talking about creative ideas and creating things. And by 1961, with the fusion between the Congress Party and the DLP, you had the introduction of free secondary education, whether it was universal or not, by talking about creative thoughts. As simple as this might look, when we're talking about land acquisition, it gives us an opportunity to help the ministers. Help the ministers. Let me make this point. There's a caveat I got to put in.
I remember.
Yes, sir.
You know, as you had
I try hard, sir, coming down.
You trying hard to come down?
They're coming down, sir.
Okay.
I just want ministers and members of parliament to learn to appreciate. If people don't express themselves freely on public issues, when you think you are going forward, you end up going backward. You have to allow people to express, because we have a view. We have a view, and the view must be respected. We have to be able to etch our name as a government in the contemporary political history of Barbados. When we look back at the 1960s, we're going to talk about national insurance and the importance of it. And we will always talk about it. We have to talk about, we will always wrestle with free secondary education. We will always have a debate on what is independence. Just as we will have a debate on what is adult suffrage. Every member of parliament in here is a political student. No experts, including me. And we only have an opportunity on Tuesdays, me, only have an opportunity on Tuesday, and I believe that nobody don't want to give me the second opportunity, and I don't want it, right? To be able to express my views on public issues. You don't have to listen to me if you don't plug your ears. If you listen, you don't have to understand. Everybody don't like comprehension. I don't want any praise. I accept any negative term because I still know who I am. I know who I am. I don't speak on any issue with any malice, because what is the sense of having contempt in my heart for anybody in here or outside? But I speak though. I really would love to see the changes. I believe that the Minister of You hear what he said? I believe that the Minister of Sports is one of the best that we have had. I know he is malleable. I know he has good intentions. And I know if he's given the opportunity, he will make the kind of fundamental changes that are so important that could give new breath, new life, a rebirth to the youth of Barbados through sports and cultural activities within the ministry. I just hope that he will expand it beyond age 35 so it can be intergenerational, and rather than holding senior sports as a peripheral activity, just try to play with the seniors in Barbados to make them believe that they can walk, run, and think fast. Bring them into the mainstream of sports. Bring them into the sports department. The disabled people, when we speak about sports, the disabled must be included. Senior citizens must be included. Nobody must be seen as outliving their usefulness. There's no monopoly on life. Nobody don't have any specific time to be worthy in life. You know when you're worthy when you listen to the things that he say and the way how he behaves. Sir, I want to tell you how much I appreciate you for making sure that you give me the adequate amount of time that I deserve, sir. I only came here just now, sir, and heard the debate, and I just felt like I had a few things to say. And I will hope that Barbados will allow us to produce a really bad. I don't need Chinese men or we be able to produce some great boxers. The United States produce boxers every day coming out of prison. With no stigma, people that we hail, the greatest boxer in the world, that come out of prisons, right? There's nothing unique about that. It's a policy and having the people with the right minds and believe that this is where we could go. Sir, I wish on another occasion, I may beg you for a little extra time, sir, so that I could see.
You probably had extra time.
Thank you very much.
You probably
sir.
had extra
Thank
time.
You very much,
I
sir.
remember.
I hope that made some positive suggestions.
All I remember was St. Lucie.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to wrap up this debate. Not much more to be said. We've had some very eloquent contributions from all members, very thought-provoking, and suggestions that we can work with and we can take on board. With relation to particular comments made by the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, which I find to be very important, echoed by other members as well, in terms of character building and community cohesion, which is very, very important in a day and age like this. We have heard some various requests being made, and this ministry will respond accordingly. The Honourable Member for Christchurch South and the Honourable Member for St. Philip North, we are here to work, and we will continue to work as a team. I always am intrigued, to be honest, by the contributions made by the Honourable Member for St. Michael East, and he has a passion for what he believes in, and he makes some very, very good contributions, and I want to thank him for his support. Thank all members, as a matter of fact, for the support of this resolution and their participation. God bless you, Mr. Speaker.
You got to beg for the resolution to be passed on, remember.
I beg to move that the resolution do not pass.
The question is that this resolution do not pass. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This resolution stands passed. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Mr. Speaker. With that, we've come to the end of today's sitting. I beg to move the adjournment of the House until next Tuesday, the 12th of October at 10 a.m.
The question is that this Honourable Chamber stands adjourned until Tuesday, the 12th day of October at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This Honourable Chamber stands adjourned until Tuesday, the 12th day of October at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.